Hi everyone. It's so wonderful to be here with you for another edition of Dialogues on Mediumship. This program was created to talk about and explore in a clear and approachable way topics related to mediumship according to Spiritism. My name is Marcia Trajano, and I'm really happy to be able to be here with you and share this moment with all of you. In dialogues mediumship, the goal is to have a simple and insightful conversation, helping to clear up the myths that still exist around this very topic, mediumship. We want everyone to see mediumship not as something distant or even mysterious, but as a natural and harmonious experience of the soul as it has been cleared, illuminated, if you will, by the teachings of Spiritism. The program is an initiative of the area of studies and practice of mediumship, which is a significant part, I may say, of the International Spiritist Council. And we are supported by Spiritist scholars and workers who, with their dedication and a lot of responsibility, commit themselves to the study and practice of mediumship. So today, our topic is overcoming challenges in Spiritist Mediumship Meetings. And as always, we want you to participate. Please do send your questions live, and we'll do our best to answer all of them throughout the program. Now, Dan, I've been talking too much, but I want to say what a great pleasure to introduce you, who I believe is such a wonderful and amazing guest today. Dan Assisi. He's the founding member of the Spiritist Institute, TSI, and the California Spiritist Association in the United States. Dan is an experienced scholar and dedicated practitioner of mediumship, and we are thrilled to have you with us, Dan. Dan, welcome. We're honored, really honored to have you here to help us, reflect more deeply about the topic, overcoming challenges in Spiritist mediumship meetings. And the mic is yours, Dan.
Thank you, Marcia. It is really a pleasure for us to be able to engage in these kinds of conversations, as you're saying, Marcia, because this is what Spiritism is about. It is about our study. It is about exchanging perspectives. It's about investigating different points of view, sharing insights. And today, we hope to do exactly that, provide some context and engage with you if you are watching live. And if you're watching after the fact, that's also very okay. We still want to engage with you in the comments. So leave us a comment or reach out to the International Spiritist Council, reach out to different groups so that we can keep this conversation going. So I'm very excited to be here today. I'm really thankful for the invitation and for a chance to talk about this incredible thing, mediumship, done in the Spiritist way, right? So truly excited to be here, Marcia. Thanks for having me.
So go ahead. The mic is yours. Go ahead. I know that with us, you're going to spend maybe 10, 15 minutes explaining the topic, and then we'll move on to our Q&A session. Thank you, sir.
Sounds like a plan. Thank you. So, hello, everyone again, right? So as Marcia described, our topic today is overcoming challenges in Spiritist mediumship meetings. But before we jump into your questions, and please feel free to send them at any point in time, we wanted to provide a little bit of context in case it helps, or in case perhaps you're not as familiar with the Spiritist approach to mediumship. First, we want to just kind of share out, if you are interested in the topic, and start with the very basic, right? The idea of what mediumship is. And Noah Allan Kardec, the codifier of Spiritism, really shared with us an insightful and simple way for us to define mediumship in the Spirit's book in question 159, if I'm not mistaken, where he says that anyone who feels the influence of the spirits is a medium. So simply put, all of us are mediums. We are just mediums that differ in the degree to which we feel the spiritual world as we understand. So that's very important to know. The reason why we don't find this word medium before the 1850s is because it simply wasn't there. It was really coined around the time of Kardec. And as a matter of fact, I think that if not by Kardec, by his contemporaries. So if we look back in our history as humanity, we will find that we have always have mediumship. We may just have called it under different names. We may have called mediums prophets, sibyls, shamans, oracles, high priests. We have always had mediumship. So mediumship is not necessarily a Spiritist invention, but we do, however, really care about and have studied mediumship, which has been at the center, at the core of Spiritism. As you can imagine, if you know a little bit of the history of Spiritism, Spiritism started with the investigation of these phenomena that were taking place, that were caused by the spirits. And with time, we spent quite a bit of time and effort studying Spiritism. It's been about almost 170 years that we as Spiritists have been meddling and really diving deep in this topic of mediumship. So we think that we have come across a vast body of knowledge when it comes to understanding mediumship. As a matter of fact, Kardec's second book, the Medium's book, was geared exactly at that, at demystifying mediumship and explaining to us how it works. And with that, then, we have a very symbolic landmark in the history of humanity, because until that time, until the publication of the Medium's book, we never had a treatise that explains mediumship in a democratic way in which anybody can learn. So that was really a divider of waters in our historical moment as a humanity, because from then on, we really began to look at mediumship in more of a rational way. You could learn and study it by yourself. You didn't need somebody who was your guru or mentor to initiate you, and it became accessible to everybody. So that is really interesting for us, because with that knowledge, we began to really dive deep into mediumship. And we started to have mediumship meetings. And the Spiritist mediumship meetings are sometimes slightly different than you might find in other spiritualist traditions. And there's a reason for that. And there's a historical reason for that. There's a developmental reason for that. So today, we are going to be talking about Spiritist mediumship meetings. So we want to just do a couple of comments here about how they differ and how they are structured, so that in case you are not a Spiritist and you're watching this, you may better understand our perspective and where we're coming from. I think we can go back and say that, you might have seen mediums do many different shows on TV. You might be familiar with Spiritist mediumship meetings, or with mediumship meetings done by other approaches. In the Spiritist approach to this, we tend to favor a couple of practices. And here's the reason why. So when mediumship started to be researched by Spiritists in the 1850s, and by spiritualists in general, the first kind of mediumship meetings that sort of arrived, they were what Kardec calls experimental mediumship meetings. Kardec, for us, is a great thinker that started Spiritism, and he tells us in chapter 29 of that great book, the Medium's book, about mediumship meetings, and he defines by their purpose and so forth. And he tells us that there's sort of three big buckets of Spiritist or mediumship meetings in general. The first one are frivolous meetings. There are meetings who have not a serious undertaking to them. People do them out of entertainment. They are not really serious. And so we don't get to learn a lot from them. And they can actually be a little bit dangerous in many different ways. That's type number one. The second type of mediumship meetings is what he calls, what I was just referring to, experimental meetings, where people were really just trying to understand how mediumship work and learn about the process. We could put some type of meetings in there. They are meetings where we're trying to learn about how to develop our skills, or perhaps how to have materialization meetings. There's all kinds of experimental meetings that are done to experiment with things and learn about things. And they're not bad in themselves. It's just a type of meeting. And then he also coined the third type of meetings, which he says is serious or productive or instructive meetings. in which we are really there to learn. And this is what ultimately we are more concerned about. And that's why you are going to see, as you step into the Spiritist context, that we tend to focus on that third kind of meeting, this instructive meetings that are really geared towards helping us learn intellectually and morally how to become better. And the reason for that is because since we have already experimented as Spiritists for 107 years with mediumship, we don't spend a lot of time nowadays experimenting with different things because we've had people who've done this before and we learn. It's still very healthy to do that. You're very entitled to do that. But I'm just trying to give you some insight is why is it that we Spiritists jump straight into most of the time to that serious meeting, that definition at the end. And that's the kind of meeting that we are going to focus a little bit on today. And if you want to, of course, ask questions about the experimental side, you're more than welcome to. I think that you get that frivolous meetings. We're not going to spend tons of time here because we're actually serious about the study of mediumship and what it can bring us, that learning process, the purpose of intellectual and moral betterment that Kardec also talks to us about in the Medium's book, specifically item 343. Also in that same chapter, chapter 29, which is a really great chapter on the Medium's book, in case you want to study more about mediumship meetings and how they're organized in general. All right, so it's important to put this concept out here because you might see, if you watch on TV, lots of programs that have mediums featuring messages from the beyond, that they are trying to validate the passing of loved ones and bring the memories. And while we think they're very important, and those also take place within the Spiritist context, we have wonderful letters that are written for family members who are longing, and who had the passing of their children or their other family members. We have a wonderful tradition of that. But the bulk of our meetings are going to be on the spiritual assistance side of things, which is just a different development of that kind of instructive meetings that take place. And in these kinds of meetings, in this kind of spiritual assistance meetings that you can also break down in many different ways, what happens within the Spiritist context is this. We gather together as a group, and after a period of study of the process of mediumship so that we can understand how it works and how it functions, and to get to know each other, we work in a team environment most of the time, 90% of the time, to facilitate the contact with the spiritual world. And in that process, we do not only seek messages from the enlightened spirits, which of course we love and always, always welcome, but we understand that now that we have internalized that we are immortal beings that have many lives through many different reincarnations, that sometimes along the way, some of us get perhaps a little stuck or a little confused. And in the process of having this mediumship meeting, we are able then to lend a hand to those spirits who are perhaps a little confused, a little lost, or a little stuck in specific behaviors that they're having a trouble time with. And then you may ask yourselves, but then why do Spiritists do this? Can't just the spirits on the other side help the spirits? They absolutely can. And the mediumistic meetings that we are a part of, they are not truly, at the end of the day, ultimately necessary, because the spirits on the other side could counsel the spirits who are also in need. That is very true. However, we can come in and give some of our energy and our attention, and in the process, not only help those who are confused and who perhaps are still thinking they are alive here in the physical world, but we can also learn in the process. So it is a win-win situation. So from the beginning, you're going to see that the purpose of a Spiritist spiritual assistant meeting in general is not only to help others, but also to learn also. It benefits those who take part of it in all kinds of ways. Now, these meetings take different shapes, they take different formats, so we can talk about those if you want to. We're going to park that topic for now. But I think what you can see here that is when we embrace this wonderfully serious task of engaging in a mediumistic meeting and the study and practice of mediumship along the way, along the guidelines that we have learned over 170 years with Spiritism, We know that this commitment is very important, and it can be very transformational for us. It requires commitment, it requires dedication, and it's tricky because we have a group of people working together to a common cause, and that also begets its own kinds of learning. You have to work as a group. You have to be in tune with that group. You have to be aware of that group. You have to provide feedback to the group, receive feedback. So there's lots of challenges from a personal perspective and from a group dynamic as well. And that's one of the things that we're going to try to focus on today, is what kind of challenges are there for individual meeting participants and for those who also lead these groups, and hopefully we can have a conversation about this. Last thing I am going to say here is there are different roles within the Spiritist meeting. It's very important for us to say that as well. So not everybody who takes part in a Spiritist mediumistic meeting is a extensive medium, as we call it. So you may not be able to see, hear, or sense very dynamically the presence of the spirits, but there is still a place for you in these meetings. You can still take place by helping us with your vibrations, with your prayers, with your counseling, with your fluids, your passes, your energy. So there is a place for you, even if you feel like you may not be an extensive medium nowadays. So these challenges we are going to investigate a little bit. Marcia is going to help us field some questions here too, but we can preempt some of these challenges, and I want to divide them into two separate challenges to kind of make our thinking easier. When we are part of mediumistic meetings, we are going to face one of two different challenges. One is a personal challenge, is how do we prepare ourselves? How do we bring ourselves to the meeting? How we remain focused? How we step outside of ourselves to help others and focus on the need of those who are communicating or who are part of a team? That's on the individual level. And on the group level, we are going to face the challenges of how do I work with people that I don't yet fully know, or I don't know for long enough? How can I set aside my preferences and how I want to work to make sure that the group as a whole functions in a good way? How is it that I lead a meeting? What is it that I should bring in? When is it that I excuse myself from a meeting if I'm not well? When is it that I make an effort? How often should I come? So there's some group dynamics here as well that are challenging on top of the personal piece. But if anything else sticks, and we'll talk more about this at the end, we just want to make sure that you know that this is a wonderful opportunity to grow and learn. Now,
Absolutely.
before we dive in, is I honestly feel that Spiritist mediumistic meetings offer three great benefits that have changed my life over the 25 plus years I've been doing it and learning from other people. The first one is it helps me develop empathy towards others, because I hear and see the cases and the suffering of other people, and that touches my heart and reminds me that my life could be different. That's benefit number one. Benefit number two is reminds me of all these wonderful learnings that we get from Spiritism about the spiritual world, about reincarnation, about the fact that we are more than meets the eye, and that we are immortal spirits, because we talk with them. We see their lives and we are reminded of our own. And the third one, it's also very simple, but it's probably the hardest one. It makes us reflect upon ourselves, our lives, and our behaviors. Because when we see challenges with others, and when we counsel others on what we think could help with their life, there is no way that we don't think about ours, or at least we should. And so in many different ways, it's a beautiful tool, again, for us to learn from our spiritual mentors and guides and those who visit us. So we're very happy to continue this conversation that Kardec was quick to foster in the Spiritist Review and all his works about how to engage in mediumistic meetings. And hopefully with this context, you now understand that we Spiritists tend to do these private meetings most of the time because there is a team coalescing, there's a team getting together, and we're trying to work on a group dynamics. So it's very hard for you, if you are not part of a group, to just walk straight out of the street and watch one of these meetings. It's not because we're trying to be the secret few. It's just because we're really trying to foster a group dynamic that allows us to be comfortable working with each other in this very personal and intimate way. So I hope this very brief context about how we do meetings and why we do meetings in the Spiritist fashion may help you understand where we're coming from, so that we can then dive into this wonderful topic, right, Marcia, of what kind of challenges we face and how can we overcome them.
Absolutely. And I just want to say thank you. Thank you so much, Dan. It is brief, but rich and enlightening introduction, right? So, with your insights, let's move forward. All of us better prepared to understand and face with balance and confidence the natural challenges of mediumship work. So, let's go ahead and start this or continue this conversation, but start with your questions. So, Dan, if you don't mind, let's answer some of the questions that we've received. And please, everyone, keep them coming. Share your doubts, your questions, your thoughts, and we want this to be truly interactive dialogue. So, with the first one, which is already on the screen, based on the three types of meetings you mentioned, Spiritist centers select to go to the instructive meeting. How would one know if it is balanced and productive mediumistic meeting?
That is a fascinating and a wonderful question for us to start with, because that should be the goal of all the meetings that we engage in when it comes to Spiritist mediumistic meetings. What we are here to do, as we know, is to love and learn. That is to kind of teach ourselves, to grow ourselves intellectually and morally. So when we set out in a group study at the Spiritist group or center or society, whichever name you may assign to it, our goal is to have these learning environments from which we can learn both intellectually and morally. And so Spiritist mediumistic meetings will be no different, or should be no different. And so how do we know that they are working well? How do we know that they are balanced and productive? And I think that framework of the purpose of it can help us understand. I think that if we can answer the question of, are we learning new things? And are these meetings helping us become better human beings? Are we transforming the way we live? And are we able to help others in the process? Then I think that we've gone a long way to answer whether that's a productive meeting. We should not really focus on how many spirits we're serving or what kind of spirits they are. We do not need necessarily to focus on finding out a lot about the background of the spirits. The important piece is that we are focused on ourselves in helping others. That is to say, that we feel like we are growing in the understanding of this wonderful body of knowledge of Spiritism. Are we applying these lessons to our life? Do we feel like the participants of the group are growing? Are they working in harmony? Do they feel like they're making progress in their understanding? And are we in the process being able to help others? Right. So I think it's a convoluted process there. Go for it.
Yeah,
go for it, Marcia.
no. I just want to say, so it's a very interesting flip of the quote unquote KPI, the key performance indicator.
Yeah.
Not the number of people, not the number of message, not the number or of famous, if you will, communicating spirits, but it's really on the medium itself. And there's a beautiful insight that you put in here. Thank you so much, Dan.
Yeah, because if you think about this, right, these meetings are also for us. Sometimes when we're learning, we're really keen on helping others. And that is a wonderful thing. So we say, oh, we're come here to help the spirits. Absolutely. Yes, 100%. We have come to lend our help for the spiritual mentors and guides to be able to assist the spirits that they select and bring, right? We play a part in it. Our part is to help host them, the spirits who are manifesting that the spiritual mentors and guides have selected, they have prepared, welcome them well, step out of ourselves to provide the best kind of counsel that will also be intuited by the good spirits. So we definitely play a part. But ultimately, when we understand how a meeting works, we understand that we are not in control of the meeting. The meeting is really directed by our mentors and guides on the other side, whose purpose is to assist the visiting spirits and also to develop us. So we also need to have a very keen sense of self-analysis and debrief, which is something that we suggest to people after all their mediumistic meetings, is that you debrief as a group really quickly and share what is it that we felt, what we think, provide feedback to each other in terms of the communications that took place and what are the main takeaways for us, because there should be a lot of reflection about our practice, our mediumistic practice, right? just because we get to a mediumistic practice group, it doesn't mean that we stop studying either. We have to continuously sharpen our saw, right? As some people would say, to develop our skills. So we absolutely need to constantly have a sense. And we can see that by how the group is working. The more that the group is dynamic, that the group works well together, that they're making progress in this knowledge of self-awareness, there should be a correlation with how our spirits who are coming and how they are getting help. And if they're getting helped, right? So there's a direct correlation between the incarnates and the discarnates there.
Absolutely. I love where you're going. Let's see if we have another question, because I have so many bubbling my brain right now. So there we go. How would the guest define? So I think you just answered to that. So do we have another one? It's often said that the mediumistic meeting functions as spiritual emergency room. In that analogy, what would be the appropriate comparison for this obsession meeting?
Great question. So I think that we can also take a quick second here to untangle some of these terms, right?
Yes.
And so within the Spiritist perspective, you may have heard this term, disobsession. And this is really about the unhealthy, prolonged, right, focus that some spirits may have on others, searching for vengeance or justice from previous acts that they feel that they've been wrong. In many different ways, I break it down to others, and I say that this obsession is spiritual bullying. It's just from a different perspective, right?
I love it. Very true to our
it's very simple for us to translate to our day-to-day, right? The thing is that we use the term bullying for a lot of things, right? When somebody comes and they do something you don't like, you call them bullies. But the truth is, bullying is prolonged. If somebody comes to you and is just mean to you and they've never seen before, that's not bullying. That's just annoying and mean, right? And so that's the same thing with obsession. Obsession, if you have the interference of a spirit who is acting against your will or against your interests, if it's once or twice, that's not obsession. That is just spiritual interference, right? Kardec defines obsession as a prolonged, ongoing effort, right? So because we know that reincarnation takes many shapes and forms, and we may have many different relationships, it's very possible that our relationships in one life may go sour, and they may carry over many lifetimes. In some instances, this animosity and this challenge, it's so strong that one of the spirits, when they discarnate, when they leave the physical body, they decide to exert this negative spiritual influence over another. That's what we call obsession. And sometimes it's so strong that they need a little bit of help in releasing those bonds. And that's what we call a disobsession meeting, a meeting in which we attend to spirits who are searching for vengeance against spirits who are either incarnate or also in the spiritual world, but they have this animosity between them that is so strong that we try to counsel them to see that it doesn't benefit them to maintain that relationship, right?
But it's a bond, right? But it's a bond. It's a link.
It's a strong bond, right? And not a positive way, not a positive one at all, right? And which is really harmful when we can go into the ideas why that's harmful. But many times, a lot of spiritists say, oh, we want to have this obsession meeting because we feel this is the kind of work that is really great and needed. That's wonderful. And that's very needed. But again, because we are not the ones who decide what the meeting is going to be about, our mentors and guides do, it's hard for us to say this will be a disobsession meeting. It requires the participation of the other side. And so sometimes there are cases that come to us that are really about those confused and needy spirits that need clarification. And those tend to be a little bit simpler in terms of guidance that we can provide over this obsession, which the person oftentimes, the spirit oftentimes know that they're discarnate, but they're just really stuck on vengefulness, right? And so when let's get to the question then, right? Finally, right? The roundabout way is that, so there is a spiritual emergency room. The meeting can serve as a spiritual emergency room. And how does that differ from this obsession meeting, right? So that will really depend on how our mentors and guides who are truly in charge of the meeting on the other side see fit for us to tackle that role or not. They will help us by understanding what is required of the spirits on the other side. They will also be able to ascertain our level of working togetherness, right? It could be very well that Marcia and I and 3 more people and 5 more people, we really want to do this obsession meeting. We really want to work on that, but we're not working together well enough to
That's a
have
good point.
a energy sense of togetherness to be able to handle these types of communications. It wouldn't be helpful and fruitful to us or to the communicating spirit. So it could be that in those cases, we may just be brought cases that are more really of a spiritual assistance front, where we're more counseling on the confusion level and so forth. So there is different kinds of cases that need different kind of counseling, and that will really depend on how we work together as a group and how we are prepared, both intellectually and morally, to host those cases.
So in emergency room situation, Dan, what comes to my mind is you are triage, right? So depending on I'm just trying to say what you're saying back to you, right? So you go to the emergency room and there's a triage desk that will say, that group, let's put the simple cut or anything that will be easy to deal with. But the really difficult ones that need to be either checked in or operating room, et cetera, we go to the ones that are ready.
Absolutely. And that triage is not us. That
Yes,
triage
exactly.
is our mentors and guides, right?
Yeah.
So they are the ones who are triaging that. Because it really is a teaching hospital, right? If we're learning fellows in that teaching hospital, it could be that Marcia and I have just started this working on the ER, and we are being brought cases that really just need a little bit of bandage, a little bit of explanation. And as we develop, right, every once in a while, our overseeing attendant over there on the other side might say, you know what, Marcia and Dan could get a little bit of a more difficult case. And so they give somebody that also has a deeper cut or is maybe a little bit violent because of the trauma they went through. And so little by little, and because Marcia and I are really making a commitment to work together, we are working on our craft and our abilities, we may with time develop that. And just like an operating room, there might be outside needs that we are unaware of, right?
Correct.
There might be local needs in the environment that are different than what we wanted. That could be like there was a major accident, a crash on the freeway near you, and many cars got hurt. So all of a sudden, your local ER is going to see an incidence of different cases. For instance, in the world right now, we have lots of armed conflicts. So we are seeing an incidence of people who are being victims of extreme violence in war or conflicts in different places. So even if you are far away, you may have received some of cases of this different incidents, right? As the spirits prepare to reincarnate. So absolutely. So this obsession piece is sometimes a little bit more complex, and it requires oftentimes a level of sophistication on our dialogue and our approach that we may not have yet developed. So we may aspire to want to do this obsession cases, but let us not get dragged down if we don't see those cases in our group. The need might not be there, and we might not be congealed as a group just yet to be able to host and direct those cases in a way that is beneficial to those who need that and to ourselves, right?
Self-reflection is all about us, the medium, right?
It really is, right? And this is why I think it's so hard for us, because when we begin to do mediumistic meetings, we really have our heart in the right place. We study and we want to help others. And we fail on the self-analysis part. We cannot become better mediums. We cannot become better mediumistic meetings participants if we are not analyzing our behavior, what we're learning, and how the group is working. A group will not move forward if its members are not working well. It's an orchestra. If my instrument is not tuned in and tuned up, and Marcia is not playing on the same beat, it's not going to sound good. We are not going to produce great music. That's not going to work. Right. So it's an important part for us to kind of think about this piece as well.
Oh, I love your images, by the way. So while we wait for the next question, I just want to say I live in Nashville. I live in downtown Nashville, Music City, lots of music. But there is what looks like a high school student outside of my balcony playing off tune. the tuba. And it's like, okay, he's practicing. One day he'll be great.
And that's wonderful, right? Like, hey, you got to do the tuba. You got to practice. You are not
Yeah.
going to be a maestro. You're not going to be a super amazing musician at first. So
Uh-huh.
those beginning musicians, they need a play to practice. These
Yes,
are our
yes.
study and practice
Yeah,
groups where we're learning to study and practice. With time,
yeah.
we might move people into different groups if our spiritist group is large enough to have multiple meetings to
Uh-huh.
address these needs, right? So all of these is important. And I think that we don't often think about this, but when we begin to study, if we start
Hmm.
to think about what a mediumistic meeting looks like from the other
Yeah.
side, we might be surprised. For
Yes.
example, imagine there's five of us. It's a very small meeting. There's five of us because it's easier to count, right? On the incarnate side. And let's say that of these five, the three of us are mediums. And let's say that three of mediums are going to do three communications each in a meeting. So
Hmm.
there's five of us. There's three spirits per three. So there's another nine spirits on the other side.
Yes. Yeah.
Then we have the helping spirits who have brought these nine spirits. Let's say one each. There's another nine spirits, right? Then we
Minimum.
may have
Yeah.
their mentors and guides of these nine spirits who are so invested in that effort because it's such a hard thing to have a mediumistic meeting that's functional where you can get guidance. So all of a sudden you have another nine. So you already have about 27 spirits just on the communicating front for those five incarnates. Not to mention our own mentors and guides, the mentor guides of our institution, and
Yeah.
other visiting spirits, as we've seen in the books of Andrew Lewis that sometimes come
Yes.
to learn
Yeah.
about this. So it could be five of us, it could be 50 of them
Yeah.
easily, right? And so the responsibility and what's happening in that theater, it's an amazing thing. And that's why it's so important for us to prepare ourselves and take this matter very seriously. And when it comes to our responsibility to know who we are and how we better ourselves and how to work together as a group.
Yeah. The mental image goes again, not to the emergency room, but the operating room where there's one patient in a circle, in
Surrounded by
another
help.
circle, in logistics, and the appointment, billing, all the diagnostics. It is complicated to say the least. But let's see if we're ready for the next question then. Let's see what we got here. How should I explain or orient someone who wants to start developing mediumship? So
Ah,
this is no longer the mediumship meeting, right, Dan? But what if I come to this meeting, right, to this live, and now you piqued my interest. How do I uh, get to develop or even get to end up in a mediumship meeting? I'm sorry.
meeting. And that's
Yeah,
a great question for
yeah.
all of us, period, because we're all mediums, just
Mm-hmm.
degrees, right? As we
Yeah.
have ascertained based on Kardec's
Mm.
saying. So it's good for us to do that. And many of us want to work in a mediumistic meeting, which
Mm-hmm.
is wonderful. And to do that, we have to develop our mediumship. What
Yeah.
does that mean? It really means to become self aware.
Mm-hmm.
Self awareness is more important than straight out ability, mediumistic ability.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the reason why I make that case, because for you to be able to develop the talents that you have, you need to know where you stand so that you can decide where is it that you want to get to, right?
Yeah.
So you need to begin to really work on getting to know yourself to understand whether you are under the influence of spirits in a grave manner, in a mild manner, or no manner at all. So to be able to develop our mediumship, besides studying how mediumship works, medium's book, a study group in your local spiritist group or a virtual one to study the mechanism of it. They're all important so that you understand how it works and that the medium is always in control of their faculties. But there's also a degree that is very important, is that self-awareness, because you can have all the knowledge in the world, but if you are unaware of how you are impacted by spiritual influence, that could become a delicate situation.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Yeah.
if I'm not aware when I'm under the influence, then I might not be a great team player in a meeting. If I'm not aware if I'm being influenced positively or negatively,
Yeah.
then I may not be a good fit for a group effort,
Yeah.
right? And so if we develop the mediumship piece, study is fundamental, and we suggest that to everybody, and it will always be, because you're always growing understanding. But there needs to be this, what sometimes you see referred to as inner reform or inner transformation within Spiritism, which is, how am I behaving? How are my acts influenced by those around me? What thoughts am I listening to? One of the questions that comes tangential to this one is, how do I know that I'm being influenced by the spirits? You know, Kardec gives us many different hints in the Spirits book. We should read those tips. And the idea is, are those thoughts something that we were thinking about? Are those something that we would normally think about? And you need to know yourself to know that, right? But ultimately, you have to decide whether you are going to act on those or not. Where they're coming from is less important than whether you will decide to act on them or not. And all of this is the hard work of mediumship, right? It's not so easy. There will be a lot of doubt about whether the communication that I just shared with people is really mine. We know that there's always a degree of mediumness in the communication, so to speak, right? So whenever there's water that comes through a faucet, there's always a little bit of water that stays in the faucet. It's shaped by the faucet. So the communication, a spirit that communicates through me will give the same message that he may give through Marcia, but these two messages will sound slightly different, because what the spirit is working with in me is slightly different than it is working with in Marcia as a resource. So to be able to understand that is also very important. So self-aware, self-knowledge is great, is fundamental. And I'll shut up after this. And here's the reason why we do this as a team. That's why the Spiritist approach is one that prefers a group effort. Because if we are doing together, then Marcia can provide feedback if I begin to think in a way that is not conducive to the meeting, or that I think I'm not being influenced in a correct way. Marcia may say, hey, Dan, what did you mean by this? Did you consider that perhaps this communication was not from whom it proposed to be? Right? So because we work together, there is strength in numbers. There's strength in numbers. And when I'm not feeling great, Marcia will help me out, and vice versa. And so the teamwork approach that we have in Spiritism is one that promotes safety as well, because then we can all work together. And if Marcia has the ability to see the spirits, for instance, she may be able to provide feedback on the spirit that was communicating. And maybe I realized that I thought that it was such a spirit, or it needed such a thing. But in fact, two other people are telling me that's not the case. So now I need to reevaluate how I process that experience.
And just as a comment, Dan, because you bring the idea of safety, right? That safe environment, the prepared environment. And yet in our mindset, and this is myth or even a great Hollywood type of horror movies that often brings mediumistic images, etc., right? So I think it's important for us to really be prepared ourselves. The group is prepared, but also we trust each other, because that strength from all of us being attuned to the mission, to the purpose of the meeting, really will help everyone in the end, right?
Absolutely. Go back to the example we were working on, right? On the operating table. If Marcia and I are operating on someone, but Marcia and I are having a thing where we are not trusting each other and what each other is doing, would you want to be that patient? No,
not at all. Yeah.
And so that's why the group, there's the personal challenges that we talked a little bit about. That's what the group challenge is. As you're dealing with all your stuff, all your baggage, all your self-awareness, part of it is understanding that Marcia is doing the same, and her style of doing things may be different. This is really great for me, because now I'm learning to step out of myself and understand that people think differently. And I'm learning how to, get used to Marcia's different style. It's difficult as we're forming a group. It's delicate. And I might be really shy and feel like I'm really second guessing myself, and I don't want to expose myself in front of other people I don't know. So it's important to take that time to get to know Marcia, to work together, to study together, to build these bonds that Marcia was alluding to. Because if we just walk into a room, we're all strangers, we may not be trusting of each other enough to carry the work at a level that would allow us to help the spirits that need help, and for us to also gain self-awareness and knowledge of things.
Absolutely. Let's see if we have another question, Dan, and now, because I'm really looking forward. So, oh, look at that. This is picking up on our conversation a minute ago. So I love it. When you say the spiritual mentors will be responsible for the triage, does it explain why some meetings can be more related to rescue and others can be more disobsession related?
Absolutely. That's exactly the point, right? When we understand how mediumistic meetings work and that they're in
Yeah,
fact guided by our spiritual mentors, they
yeah,
are the triage. They are
yeah,
the management. They are the
yeah,
triage. We are just the people that come in to help with the basic stuff, right?
yeah.
Because not only do they select the spirits that
Uh-huh.
will be better suited for the type of meeting that we can do based on our current level of understanding, right? But
Yeah,
they will also take care of those spirits afterwards. So
yeah,
they, from the beginning, direct the meeting, select the participants, adjust that, and take care of the spirits after we provided some guidance to them, right?
yeah,
So absolutely, the spiritual mentors will be responsible for the triage. They will be that, and they might decide that that day they had a plan of treatment, right? This spirit needed perhaps a more serious intervention when it comes to a dialogue about learning to let go of this hatred that he has or she has had over many lifetimes with the other spirit.
mhm,
And there is a great medium that is well suited to receive that spirit that day. They have been, near each other. There's a period of getting to know each other fluidically. It gets a little bit more complex, but during the week, those mediums might already be exposed to this communicating spirit so they can get acquainted, spiritually speaking, to each other. And last minute, something
mhm.
happens, and that medium decides they are not going to go to the spiritist meeting that day. And then
Yes.
there is a shuffle in plan, and management has to figure it out. Should they relocate that communicating spirit to another medium, or should they just withdraw that treatment from that week and take it to the next week? That's why being part of a mediumistic meeting sometimes is such a commitment. It's
Mhm.
not something that you just do it when you feel like. It really requires us committing to being there, to being present, to studying, to
Yeah,
getting to know each other so that we can know that we can count on each other. Imagine if
yeah.
you were going to get operated one day, and you get there and he says, you know what, doctor didn't show up today, come back next week.
Oh, no.
Right?
And stuff do happens in the operating room
Yeah.
as well as in the mediumship meeting, right? But I think the aim is to minimize or avoid them altogether. So preparation, preparation, preparation. Let's see if we have another question. We learned discipline is important in mediumistic meetings. Could you say something about it? I love the question, by the way, because I
Yeah,
think it goes into that holistic preparation, but as well as the perhaps the individual commitment, right, Dan?
absolutely. And I think the key word there, Marcia, is preparation that you said, right?
Yeah.
Because the discipline in the meeting is paramount. First of all, let's say that's an hour long meeting. It's a long meeting. In that 1 hour, you have to be disciplined mentally to stay
Mm,
focused on the meeting at hand. It's hard. You
yeah.
don't want to deviate to, oh my goodness, how was my day today? Because you're part of a circle. You're helping out with the energies, whether you're communicating, dialoguing, or just providing the prayer and the harmony piece. You have to be on for 1 hour, and that's mental discipline, right? The second kind of discipline, which is also mental, is no judgment,
Mhm.
is to be focused on the importance of the person who's having the help given at a point in time. So if a
Yeah.
spirit has a specific case, and let's say that in that particular case, I am in the support part of things, I am
Mhm.
vibrating, I'm not dialoguing, I'm not communicating the spirit, I am just watching and connected. And then I hear that the counselor who's dialoguing with the spirit says something, and I say, well, that's stupid in my mind, right? Or I wouldn't do that, right?
Mhm.
So these kinds of mental indisciplines help not
Yeah.
the case, right?
Yes. Yeah.
They do not help things at all. So we also have to understand that, oh, I would have done things differently, but that's not about me right now. It's about me supporting the words that were said and the treatment that, imagine that you had 2 or 3 doctors attending to somebody who's not feeling well. They broke a leg. The first doctor says, we're going to put that in the cast. And the other one says, I don't think that's a good idea. Right? You know? And so mentally, even though
Yeah.
we don't say those words, mentally, our emissions are seen and known. And so the other type of mental discipline is supporting what's going on, even though, and
Yeah.
that means setting our needs. So it's being present in the location, like, being not outside the room. It's also being present with what's being said. And that's just in the room. And outside the room is, hey, am I in a good place to come into the meeting today? Did I calm my mind before I came in, or am I still riled up? Did I have a good, healthy lifestyle in this past week? Imagine if I come in and I'm telling us a spirit, you really need to be more patient,
Yeah.
right? But I was not patient my entire week.
Yes.
And then he might have followed me the entire week to get acclimated to my spiritual state. He says, well, but on Tuesday, you're now very patient with your kids. I was there. I heard it. We have cases of this. We have gone through this,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So there's a discipline that happens outside the meeting. And that's
Yeah.
why mediumistic work is so interesting, so powerful, so transformative. We have to be on our best behavior all the time.
Yeah, in fact, there's a couple of books that Joanna DeAngelis, as you know, I'm a student of Joanna DeAngelis, and she writes about that, the commitment to the work of mediumship. It doesn't only begin and end in that meeting. It is all the time. And there are many ways that we can do that. But regardless of that, the word that comes to our mind in that discipline is authenticity, right? You don't say, oh, today I'm humble, I'm a supportive, I'm a helpful person, but I walk out of this environment and I'm anything but that, right? So, anyways, this is good. Do you have anything else to say, or should we flip to another topic?
Let's go to the next one. I think discipline is key for life, and mediumship is part of life, right? And so
Yes.
learning how to be disciplined with our choices, with your mind, knowing that we're not perfect,
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
like, going too hard on ourselves,
Yeah.
but knowing that we need to be dedicated to that which we find important. And that is discipline,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely. So let's see if we have another question. Is animism a possible interference in the mediumistic meeting? That's a good one, huh?
It's a great
Juicy.
question. Yeah. And again, if you are not familiar with the word animism, within the
Uh-huh.
Spiritist context, that means animism is the content, understanding, ideas, and insights from the medium, him or herself. So
Yeah.
in some instances, there is that, well, in all instances, there's always a degree of animism in any communication. What is that?
Yeah.
The background of the medium and who the medium is, because the medium is the relay of the message. In most cases, there's a little bit of the medium in the message. The
Mhm.
challenge is when there is a lot of bit of the medium and maybe no spirit at all, or
Mhm.
that the medium then distorts the communication.
Mhm.
That is always a possibility, and it's not a bad thing necessarily. What do I say by that? When we are starting, so hear me out. When we are starting a new mediumistic group and we have new mediums getting together and they are trying, they're experimenting, it is very likely that the first communications of a medium will have a high degree of animism,
Mhm.
right? Because
Mhm.
it's from their own development. They are still getting used to becoming medium. So there's a lot of them in the message, even though the great role of a medium is to have as little of them in the message as possible, right? And so animism is always a factor. It won't necessarily be a negative piece, because sometimes mediums are selected because of their background. Let's
Yes.
say that we have a spirit that was an engineer in his previous life. He thinks he's not dead. He still sees himself as an engineer. He likes to express himself as an engineer in a very logical manner. And so our triage helpers on the other side, our mentors and guides, may
Mhm.
look into all our mediums and say, we have somebody with a similar background
Yeah.
that will help the tenor of the communication to be felt, and that spirit will feel more comfortable communicating through that medium than you would otherwise through a poet, right?
Yes.
Because the language of the brain from that medium is more comfortable for the spirit. So that degree of animism will be helpful for the communication. But again, it matters is the degree of which that is happening. There is never really a place where we have absolutely no animism, because the medium is always in control. But what we wanted to do is minimize the degree of animism so that we can get the message through, because it's not about the medium. It is about the communicating spirit and their needs and how we can address that. So animism does interfere with mediumistic meetings. The difficult challenge for those who are in charge of the meeting and the participants of the meeting is to be on the lookout for a level of animism that is not helping the development of the medium and or of the group. If that's the case, then we want to start to bring it up and talk separately with the mediums, work with the group. It could be that we maybe for a little moment there, that medium takes a little break to work on its self-evaluation piece, but still attend the meetings. But that's a very delicate piece, because every time that we are working on developing ourselves, it's very delicate. It's just the way it is, right? So it can absolutely interfere in the communication. It's not at always bad, but we have to be on the lookout. That's why self-awareness is such a key piece to our mediumistic work.
Beautiful, beautifully said. I think we have time for this one last question, Dan. How can one distinguish negative spiritual interference from the medium's own emotion state? And I think that goes quite well with the idea of animism is okay. Spiritual interference exists all the time, but how does it all come together in a mediumship meeting, if you don't mind?
Yeah, I think that we'll do this one quickly too, because we know we're coming on time. But that's a great topic that is not only for mediumistic meetings, but our own lives, because we're all mediums. We'll feel that whatever we learn in a mediumistic meeting carries over. It's transferable to our daily lives. And that's the beauty of it, right? And so, again, self-awareness. Do you know what emotional state you're in? If you are aware of what emotional state you're in, and all of a sudden you feel things that are different than your emotional state, chances are those are outside influences. They could be positive ones. They could be negative ones. You could be maybe frustrated and all of a sudden you start feeling better. Hey, positive influence just took place. We always think about the negative spiritual interference. We never remember the positive spiritual interference that also takes place, right? And so it's about knowing where you are. Are you able to regulate yourself? Are you able to calm yourself down? Are you aware of how you're feeling? If you're in a state of mind and there is a feeling or a thought coming that is different than the one you're in and is a negative one, there could be a spiritual negative influence take place. Sometimes it's not intentional. Sometimes you're just in an environment in which that's taking place. Right? So it's good for us sometimes to withdraw ourselves from environments that are negative, because it might not be an intentional spiritual negative influence on us, but because we are in that environment, we receive that negative influence, right? Having said that, how wonderful it is that we have these negative spiritual influences, because they teach us how to be close to them. We are only going to be affected by them if we let ourselves be affected by them. So that's the training. That is the battle of the mind, which is, I recognize I'm in a state, emotional state. I recognize that there are some ideas that are not mine. What do I do? Can I remove myself from that position physically? Can I elevate my mind? Can I pray? Can I balance myself? Can I take a moment to center? That's why we're talking about the power of prayer, which is paramount in mediumistic work, but also in the work of betterment, right? So we can distinguish by being aware of who we are, what we're thinking in that moment, and whether that's the kind of thinking pattern that we want. Maybe that negative vibe that you're feeling is yours, my friend, right? And you still have to deal with it. It was not from the outside. In a mediumistic meeting, it's highly important that we fix that straight away. So we have to be extra on point for that, right? But in
Yeah.
our lives, it also matters too. So can we be self-aware? Are the thoughts and feelings that you're feeling different than what you're feeling right now? Are they thoughts that you normally feel? If they're not what you normally feel, that's another red flag for you to think of where they're coming from. But step number 3 is, which ones do you want to feel, regardless of where they come from? What is it
Yeah.
that you are in control of? What is it that you want to feel?
I love it. We are at time, but I'd love to, before we say goodbye, if you have any final thoughts or any message that you wanted to leave to all of us, especially for those mediums who are engaged in mediumship meetings and they're going through some challenges.
I just want to say that mediumship is perhaps one of the greatest gifts that God has given us, because it allows us to get in touch with ourselves and to evolve faster. Because again, it brings us empathy to others. When we see, feel, hear, or talk to spirits who are suffering, it opens our heart to suffering in the world, and it helps us step outside of our own reality.
Mhm.
So if you are suffering, if you are feeling in that moment, remember you're not alone, because our mentors and guides who guide our meetings, who guide our lives, are with us. And this learning about who we are spiritually is of a fundamental nature, and it has the power to transform our experiences now if we open ourselves to it. But we need self-reflection. So it's about empathy. It's about the spiritual world understanding. It's about self-reflection. Mediumistic meetings within the Spiritist content are an incredible tool for us to transform ourselves and to know who we are and better ourselves intellectually and morally when we apply ourselves. It is not easy. But as friend Joanna DeAngelis would say, we must pay the price of that benefit. It is so worth it. The value we get is so much greater than the price we pay. And so regardless of whether you are an ostensive medium that can see things or not, you can be part of a mediumistic meeting if you want to. And you can study mediumship even if you don't want to be part of a meeting, because it will help you develop your awareness of who you are and understand the phenomena. So we hope that you can continue on your journey of getting to know Spiritism and mediumship. A great place to start, as usual, it's the Spirit's book, followed by the Medium's book, or go straight to the Medium's book. Look at the places that you want to study. There's so many additional literature that can help, but sit with it. And our suggestion here to close things up is go talk to somebody. Be part of a study group. Go share your insights, because we always learn a lot when we talk to each other.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, everyone.